need to buy yourself a gun. What? A gun? What? Like a handgun for personal protection. Maybe somebody tries to mug you. What? What if your government tries to throw you in a can? What? You're gonna want a shotgun. Oh. What? An automatic rifle and a lot of ammo. A gun? Yeah, a gun.
We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They'll burn you out like a Waco. They'll stick your ass in a camp. Jackbooty cops in riot gear, gonna kick your ass and laugh. The revolution is on its way. Better lock and load your AK. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They gave your money to the banksters. They stole your pension funds. It's time that we took to the streets. It's time we had our turn. A revolution is on its way, and the founding fathers would say, buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. You gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta drag them through the streets.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Welcome to PrimerTime Live on UCY.tv. My name is Michael.
Hey, and I'm Dan. How you doing, Michael?
Not too bad, Dan. We got a special guest tonight, all the way from South Korea. We have Nicholas.
How you guys doing?
Good to
Hey,
hear you,
Nick.
man.
Good to hear
Good,
you.
good. Thanks for having me on, guys. I appreciate it.
So you recently had some surgery.
I sure did. I just had my left shoulder repaired, courtesy of the U.S. government, and it's a little bit of pain, but I can handle it.
So you
Put
get
in
a
a
little,
robo shoulder so you can carry the 88 Magnum.
Yeah, it's definitely not a robo shoulder that can handle that. Remember, my shoulder is made by the lowest bidder.
You've got defective Chinese shoulder then.
No, it has to be American made, so this one's probably coming from Colt.
Nick, you're in Korea. What kind of firearms does citizens have over there, South Korea?
Private ownership of firearms is not prohibited. It is prohibited in Korea. It's not allowed at all.
There are 0 firearms legally in the hands of regular folk.
Regular folks do not have it. If you have had a firearm in the past, more than likely it is at the local police station, so long as you have a statement of official use on file and that you notify them when you want to use it. You check it out from them. You notify them when you get to your area if you're going to do some kind of hunting or sport shooting, and or you return it to them and call them and let them know that you're on the way. That is Nancy Pelosi's wet dream out here.
I'm telling you, South Korea sounds a lot like New York.
Well, you know, they do have shotgunning down on one of the southern islands. They have a big pheasant hunting industry. Of course, these are like caged hunts where they raise them just from little chicks and then they throw them into the sky, and then, you know, businessmen go out there and think that they're Johnny Crackshot for a day and get to shoot down a bunch of pheasants.
You have cowboy hats now. Ha ha. Let me ask you the most important question about South Korea. They got 22 ammo over there?
Yeah, I think this is.
Are they short too?
Yeah, they don't have it either.
Ridiculous.
Well, you
isn't
know,
it?
bringing this up, it's kind of interesting. No firearms ownership in South Korea, and well, we see what's going on worldwide. And tell you what, there's not a whole lot of firearms ownership in Ukraine, but it looks like they've decided to have a group that's going to be kind of like the Ukrainian NRA. And well, they come out with a statement that says today every citizen in Ukraine understands why our country has hundreds of thousands of policemen. Last illusions were crushed when riot police used rubber batons and boots at Independence Square on peaceful citizens. After such actions, we realized that it is enough only to adopt the gun law. As of today, Ukrainian Gun Owners Association will start to work on the preparation of amendments to the Constitution, which will provide an unconditional right for Ukrainian citizens to bear arms. People should have the right to bear arms, which will be put in the Constitution. Authority should not and will not be stronger than its people. And probably the most important line of this is armed people are treated with respect. And unfortunately, I butchered that, but that's amazing that they've come out and they're standing up. They're standing up. What would happen to a group like that in California?
Well, I'll tell you what, they lost 88 protesters? Thereabouts.
That's right, but they've also they're a nation that's also experienced large losses of people in the past. I mean, there was something called the Holodomor that happened in the Ukraine, and I think it was between 1932 and 1933. They lost 12 million residents. I mean, through starvation and through starvation and government brutality. So they realized that.
I was going to say, basically what you've seen here happen in Ukraine last week was you saw a government that had near total control collapse within a matter of days. I think that they had, they've been on the streets and they've been protesting in the main town square called the Maidan. They've been protesting for 3-4 months, maybe a little bit longer, but only within the last week and a half had there been basically the collapse of the central government and the president himself fleeing and leaving Kiev for his, traditional home bases of support. He figured the jig was up, and I think now the Ukrainian parliament has basically made him, a person of interest and want to have him arrested.
I do believe they put out an arrest warrant for him today. I think I saw that.
I sure hope you don't get sent there or something like that.
No. They'll never send us anywhere where they have good-looking women. That's rule number 1 in the Army.
Oh, okay. So you're pretty clear on that part, huh?
Yeah. I mean,
so you're going back to Afghanistan, is what you're saying?
Well, if it's not there, it's South Korea. If it's not South Korea, it's probably somewhere else in the Middle East, and they'll cover them up too. You know what I mean?
So you're in South Korea. That brings up to mind the M1 Garands that South Korea is trying to sell us back or give us back so we can sell them. What's the story on that, Nick? You're familiar with
actually, in 2009, Dan, we had the South Korean government, basically their Ministry of Defense, said, "Hey, guess what? We've got a lot of these lend-lease type M1 Garands that the United States gave South Korea after World War II when we were trying to bolster their forces and then subsequently during the Korean War." Well, that was all well and good except for the fact that South Korea makes just about damn near everything. So they have their own indigenously produced firearms and they have their own firearms industry. And they've got a stockpile of about 1 million M1 Garands that they were trying to send back to the United States. And in 2009, President Obama had initially said, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll accept these back. Well, in 2010, the State Department ran under Hillary Clinton, decided that she was going to go ahead and forbid the re-entry of these firearms into the United States, lest they fall into illicit hands. And I don't know how illicit, you can get from one government transferring weapons to another government, but apparently it's more along.
And not only that, but once it goes from the South Korean government to the United States government, it stays within the United States government control until it's purchased by somebody who meets the standards and criteria basically required by the United States government, because they went to the CMP, and that's the Civilian Marksmanship Program.
Right.
Maybe people aren't
allowed to be entered.
What an M1 Garand is. But the M1 Garand it's a serious rifle. It's 30-06 caliber, and that's 7.62 by 63. Right. It's a rather large bullet. It's a hunting round for anything, and it's 8 rounds of of semi-automatic Fury, really.
We just call that 8 rounds of freedom. Thank you very much.
I believe General Patton called the M1 Garand the greatest implement of war ever created.
That's right.
Sure
did. You feel
now that being said, it's quite large, right? I mean, it's not it's not the size of a Ruger 1022.
No. And Dan, I didn't catch what you said real quick. What was that?
It's just I'm not sure, but the size of it, yeah, it's a quite heavy weapon, Michael.
You're not gonna want to do anything that requires taking that for anywhere other than a truck, going out to the stand and then coming back down from a hunt. I mean, you will not see anybody committing armed robberies using an M1 Garand. That just doesn't happen.
Most of them come with slings. That's correct.
Right. Yeah,
but they're accurate.
They come with slings. You can find them at the gun show, and they already have slings on them.
Well, when you find them at the gun show, you'll find them for $1,400.
Which is why people go to the CMP and try and get them there for $625.
Absolutely, and would not the addition of 1 million to the CMP stockpile, that would have probably some sort of grave consequences for people invested in this.
Well, number one, you would think that, hey, obviously if we're gonna put a little bit more in circulation, that'll probably do a little bit to bring prices down. Not significantly, but you know what? If you got a little bit more than 1 million more coming in on stock, you're not gonna see the prices hover at the same amount. Secondly, yeah, there's a lot of people with vested interest in keeping these out of the hands of average everyday citizens that are, legal and eligible to own firearms. There is a big portion of our government that does not want the average citizen to hold firearms, President included, Attorney General included, former Secretary of State included. There's a cabal that believes that the only ones who should be able to hold firearms are those who control the government.
Nick, you know a lot about the CMP. Why don't you talk about that to our audience a little bit? TheCMP.org is the website. And,
right.
Tell us something about it.
Okay, Dan. Well, basically what the CMP is, it's a civilian marksmanship program. And it's an organization that holds competitions and national matches at its 2 different armories across the country. I believe there's one in Ohio and I think there's one in Mississippi. And what these guys do is that they actually run sales for different types of weapons that have been in the U.S. military stockpiles. They start with the M1 Garand, the M1 carbine, so it fires a 30 caliber carbine bullet. They also have, going back to the World War I era, they have the M1903 Springfield, and then they have the 1917 Enfield rifles. And some of them, they even used to sell Eddystone rifles. So if you ever seen these old bolt action 30 caliber firearms in museums, they'll actually sell them to you as long as you're, number one, legally eligible to own a firearm. You belong to a shooting or a gun club that's got an FFL, and they can verify your participation. And they'll actually, if you decide that you want to buy it and you want to wait about 6 to 10 months, they'll send it direct to your house in a hard case. So depending upon whatever you want to buy, and whatever they have firearms available for, you could probably get yourself a good deal, and you won't get taken on the price. Now,
so they send it to your house, you said? You don't have to go through an FFL?
They'll actually send it to your door in a hard case.
Oh, okay. You have to have an FFL to actually purchase one, though, on the side,
right.
Correct? Okay.
Right.
Well, very interesting. So the prices are not too bad, I assume.
Well, there's, just with everything else, Dan, there's different grades to what they're selling. And so if you were looking for a bottom of the barrel type, fixer upper M1 where you wanted to go out and buy just the stock and everything that didn't have to be perfect, those are all gone. Those have been gone for quite a while, and they're not even accepting orders on those any longer. You want to do, stepping up a little bit more to service grade, which show less wear and tear. These are going to be anywhere from $625 all the way up to $2,500, depending upon what you get. So, anything that's made by Harrington Richardson is still pretty much available, as well as, on some of the pricier end models, the stuff that's going to be made by, Winchester and or Springfield Armory. most of those are gone. So you're looking at mostly things from Harrington and Richardson, and that's about it.
So they have a couple of physical locations too, where you can actually walk in and pick your firearm out among racks of them. Is that correct?
Well, that's like I said. If you go to their armories, I think there's one in Ohio, and like I said, there's the one that's in Mississippi. You can actually take a look and see what they've got. And I think it's Anniston Army Depot is one of them, and they actually do their shipping out of there.
Now, when they ship just by post office, or do they ship by UPS or FedEx?
You know what? I'm not sure, because I haven't gotten the courage up to buy one.
Have you ever been interested in the curio and relic license? That's something that I find to be interesting. I believe it has to be older than 50 years old and used in military service to be a curio and relic.
Actually, I have had some interest in doing that, and having formerly lived in Germany, I've had some experience with dealing with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms.
How was Satan?
Yeah, actually, the people that work there in West Virginia are really good people. I was conversing with them back and forth from Germany, and I explained to them my scenario was I had some formerly military and sporterized Mauser action firearms that I wanted to bring back. And, in addition to everything that I purchased over there that was either a semi-automatic or just a regular bolt action, they worked with me to get whatever I could get back. And there was only one firearm that was not authorized for me to be able to re-import to the United States. So I think that over the course of the 4.5 years that I was there, almost 5 years I was there, I bought, I think, between 8 and 10 rifles, and I only wasn't able to bring back one. So I can say that the folks there at the ATF in Martinsburg, West Virginia, they were good, hardworking folks, and they worked with me to get what I needed back.
Well, that's pretty interesting. You had a positive experience with the ATF when we see very little of that otherwise.
Well, and that's the thing, I'm looking at it from a different perspective than most folks do. Most folks in the States very rarely travel outside the United States with their firearms, where I do it quite routinely. And, I've done it from leaving Hawaii, going through the continental United States and then on to Europe, and then also bringing that stuff back in. And I've seen the folly and I've seen the mistakes that people make actually trying to transport firearms. So I learn by other people's mistakes, and I learn by their example. And I've actually come up with a way to make sure that wherever I'm going, I know exactly what the laws are and what exactly is if I'm traveling by airline, whatever their procedures are for allowing people to travel with firearms, because there's nothing more frustrating than getting to an airport and being treated like, you're a terrorist because you have an unloaded firearm in a locked container.
That's quite dangerous, my lord.
Yeah, I know.
Let's hope that those locks don't. I just shudder to think of the consequences if those locks were to open spontaneously and that hard case was to pop open.
Yeah, the thing might reassemble itself.
Oh my! And materialize probably the 88 Magnum.
Yeah, there you go. Or a ghost gun.
Oh, ghost guns. Beautiful subject.
We're not going to cover that, surely. No, we're talking about firearms, police.
This does bring up a pretty interesting subject, because he brings up the ghost guns. Now, ghost guns are defined as something that's either made with a 3D printer or made at home with, say, like an 80% kit. Now, well, for people who might not understand what that is, an 80% kit is the numbered part of the firearm, usually the frame of a pistol or the lower of an AR-15, and it doesn't have all the holes drilled out. You basically have to drill it out and maybe do some milling to some of them. It's not something that in your backyard if you don't have the equipment, number one, and you've never done it. Well, there's been some outrage in California that, oh my Lord, somebody is going to build a ghost gun, and think of the children and demanding plans for immediate action and all that. Well, if you really want to shut down the ghost gun industry, the first thing you're going to have to do is shut down Lowe's and Home Depot and Garden Center and all these places that would happen to sell plumbing pipe and caps and spring. These are relatively simple mechanical items.
Well, I think
they're trying to legislate idea.
Well, and I think that's what Dan was trying to say. You know, this topic's really been, you know, gone over a lot. But I think what it comes down to is that there's just a fanatical element of society out there that will, number one, believe the lies that they're told in terms of firearms and, you know, how dangerous firearms can be when they're untraceable or untrackable, or, I mean, there's even a plastics firearms law, you know, undetectable firearms. You know, we do have a lot of problems when it comes to people pushing fear. And
I've always found it interesting that the Ten Commandments has about 200 words in it, and the regulation of broccoli has over 1 million in it. Not to say the regulation of firearms. So we've got some issues there.
Well, I don't know. I don't eat broccoli, so I'll leave that there.
Nick, I want to know about the laws in Europe also, because you've also hunted in Europe and all that. Is that correct?
That sure is, Dan. I actually, you know, I look at it as a privilege. You know, not very many Americans get a chance to live overseas, and I did basically I've been overseas since 2005. I haven't lived in the U.S., so it's definitely a different place than when I left it. But what I did learn
you've almost got no idea how much different.
Yeah, I'm sure. But what I have learned is how other countries, you know, run their firearms laws and things like that. You know, Dan, where you live, you know, how hard is it to go out and get a hunting license? What do you got to do?
Oh, not much. Just go to Walmart, I guess, and get your license. As long as you have the driver's license.
Yep. So you'll get 2 deer tags and maybe, you know, whatever freshwater species goes with it, and that's your tag, right?
Yeah, that and a trout stamp, of course.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, well, in Germany, for example, your hunting license requirements are, first off, that you have to, number one, not have been convicted of anything at any time that basically deals with mental instability. So number one, there's a prohibition against a certain class of people from having firearms or access to firearms. Secondly, you actually have to take a 6-month hunting course, which talks everything about biology of the game species, forestry, firearms knowledge. It is an all-encompassing course about everything that has to do with weapons, because in Germany, specifically, hunting is not something you do on the weekend or, you know, out between, you know, end of October and the beginning of January. It's a year-round profession that folks are expected to do in order to cut down on the amount of damage to a forest. I mean, you've seen.
That's interesting that you call it a profession and you don't call it a sport. You don't call it a hobby or a recreational activity.
No, and it's not, because honestly, when you think about it this way, if you've got your own private land, I think, you know, people in Tennessee have their own private land. You know, people in Texas have their own private land. If you do that and somebody hits something on your land driving through it, you know, it's just roadkill, right? No big deal. If it's on a state highway or something like that it butts up to your land, it's just roadkill. It's no big deal. Well, in Germany, if you have a hunting lease that you're responsible for, and somebody driving on a roadway hits a deer or hits a wild boar, the police will call you out there to dispatch of it. So it could be 2-3 in the morning. Somebody's driving by in a BMW M3 Alpina, and they slam into a wild boar. And that's the hunter's fault for not really taking his job seriously and making sure that the numbers are low.
So they purposely compile the numbers low.
I think that's an insanity law.
Well, here's the thing. Like I said, it's not a sport. It's not a pastime. This is a profession. I've got one of my hunting partners that I've been hunting with up until just this last summer when I left Germany, and we would routinely go out hunting 4 to 5 times a week in the evening during the deer season to shoot a certain amount of deer to keep the numbers low. And the way that those numbers are determined is that we actually have a forester, person who works for the State Department of Forestry in whatever German state, and they will actually do a survey of however much damage he feels is being done to the native plants and tree species out there. So he will take a formula, and he will walk 10 and 15 meters, and he will look for pine trees, because that's the preferred food for the small deer. And he will look and see how many of the main stem of the pine trees have been eaten off. And they've got, just like everything else German, they've got a formula for it. And they will tell you how many over your population is, and they'll tell you what you have to do for a harvest plan. So in addition to, not having to be able to go to a Walmart and pick up a ticket or a tag, you've got to go through a 6-month course. You've got to learn about everything in the deer biology and the habitat management and the forestry. Well, oh, by the way, you have to go out and take an actual shooting exam, because it's not just one thing to say, hey, we're going to go out there, sit in the stand and just shoot whatever we shoot, get it, liver shot or gut shot and go chase it. No, you've got to fire with different types of firearms, and you have to be able to demonstrate proficiency with those firearms. So, for example, you will take 5 shots at a standing target 50 meters away. So to be able to shoot within a deer-sized target, shoot the vitals. You take another one at a fox, and then at a moving target like a wild boar silhouette, and you have to be able to shoot a wild boar silhouette moving at 35 meters and be able to shoot that with 3 out of 5 in the vitals. And then they'll move you over to shotgun, and they have a running rabbit target, which is a 3-segmented metal hair, and it runs on the ground on a set of cables, and you have to shoot that 5 out of 10 times with the 12 gauge. So, in addition to all that, oh, by the way, there's still a written and oral exam.
How much does this cost?
The average German spends 2,500 euros, which a euro is about $1.30 American. So it takes them about 2,500 euros and 6 months of time to do this exam. Now, that is unheard of to most Americans.
That would start fires and riots in my nation.
Well, yeah, but I'll tell you this: there's
because I've just decided to secede, and I'm now the nation of Texas.
Yeah,
we're not playing this crap anymore.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. I mean, and I think Dan's hit on it in the past. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with demonstrating so somebody can shoot well. I mean, that's why we're always harping on making sure people get out and spend time on the range. I would rather go hunting with a guy that I know he has passed that exam, because it's not a joke. I mean, when you get up there and you got people watching you to see how you shoot, you quickly separate the men from the boys.
Not only
pressure's
that,
on, yeah.
Well, the pressure's on, and that's in a competition sort of sense. But if you're out walking a field, you don't want a guy that's going to be about 7 yards behind you with he doesn't know whether to, how to use the safety on his shotgun.
Well, that's why you don't go.
He doesn't know the basics of. He does not know the 4 basics of safety.
Right, and
good place to bring those up, Michael.
Absolutely. Dan, hit him.
Well, of course, the first is always you treat every gun as if it's loaded. And every gun that's handed to you or whatever you're handling, you always inspect that gun and make sure it's unloaded. Take the magazine out or check the cylinder and and the barrel and make sure it's clear.
Absolutely. And you physically inspect it and verify that it is clear.
That's right. And then the second rule, of course, is the muzzle direction. Is it pointed in the proper direction? Make sure your firearm's always pointed in the proper direction. The muzzle, always be aware of where the muzzle is pointed, where the bullet might come out. Yep. And the third one is know your target, of course. You got to know your target, know what you're shooting at, and know what's around your target and what's behind your target. And the fourth and most important rule is, Michael,
keep that booger hook off the bank switch, people,
until you're ready to shoot.
That's right. You can't have enough respect for proper trigger discipline. Please, people, keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to fire the weapon. There's many videos out there. If you don't have the training, it's easiest just to point with your finger and keep it outside the trigger guard. Please, accidental discharges, because it's not really an accident, it's negligence.
That's right, Michael. It's actually, even from military speaking, there's no such thing as an accidental discharge. Every weapon that is fired, whether it's by negligence or if it's, at a specific target, it takes an active commission for that weapon or that firearm to discharge a round. So it's not something that, oops, accident. Nope. You made a
the firearm does not just go off. Somebody has to pull that trigger. And we have a special responsibility as people who enjoy basically a tool that's under threat at every opportunity by legislators all over this nation. We have the utmost responsibility to be absolutely safe with these things. Please, everybody, be safe with them.
That's true, and always wear ear protection and eye protection when you're practicing.
Well, let me talk a little bit about that responsibility, Dan. You brought up a good point. We're talking about trigger discipline. We're talking about making sure that we know the factors of safety. What's your guys' take on safeguarding those weapons while at home? I see almost every firearm is sold with a lock and usually a cable lock. What's your take on people having to have a gun safe if they want to have a firearm at home?
Everyone should have a gun safe, in my opinion. I'd hate to leave home without one. I'd leave my guns not in a safe.
Do you believe in the legislation of a safe?
In certain instances, I do, especially NFA weapons.
For the average homeowner who goes out to Wally World and picks up a Maverick 88 shotgun and brings it home, does he have to?
No, I don't think there should be a safe requirement there. I think it should be loaded and sitting by his door if he wants to have it that way.
Well, the reason why I brought that up, Dan, was because we were talking about the differences between Germany and the United States. Is that in Germany it's mandated that if you have the right to have firearms and if you have the permission to store them at home, you will have a gun safe that is state approved. And oh, by the way, the office that is responsible for verifying that you have said safe is authorized to come out and do an on-the-spot inspection to make sure you are properly storing your weapons in the safe.
Did they ever do that to you, Nick? They ever pay you a visit?
Yeah, they actually did. It's called the Ordnungsamt. And what they do is they will come out there to make sure that your pistols and your rifles are not stored within the same compartment of your safe. They have different class safes.
They might mingle and get ideas.
Yeah, well, you never know what they're going to say to each other, right? So actually, your ammunition and your pistols cannot be stored with your rifles in the larger compartment. You have it's a safe within a safe. You've seen those 2 compartment safes. Well, that's the way they are in Germany. They're mandated that you will, if you're going to have the right to store weapons, you will store it in that. And at any time, the Ordnungsamt can show up and say, "Hey, we'd like to inspect your safe. We know that it's this model. We know that it's this make and manufacture. And we want to make sure that you've got your 2 sets of keys, your 1 set with you and 1 set without, and that you're not storing ammunition and pistols together with your rifles."
That's one reason that shies a lot of people away from buying an NFA weapon. And I have a friend that's got over 100 machine guns, been in the business for 26 years, and never been paid a visit by the NFA. So I don't think they get out too much, and they're not going to be too worried about a 9mm suppressor you might purchase, or a 22 suppressor, for example. So people really don't need to worry about that aspect of the NFA.
I think if we give them the power to legislate us into another safe, what are they going to legislate next? Now we're going to have mandatory magazine, I don't know, a magazine block or something, some sort of cap you have to put on your magazine. So you have to remove the magazine before this cap before you insert it into the weapon. What's next? If we give them 1 inch on mandating safes, then I think that we've got problems coming in the future again.
Well, I think that's even something that doesn't have to be legislated. I think that that's something that the average gun owner can see the value in storing things safely, not only for protecting them in their own.
But I'm talking about get into people's the portion of personal responsibility that goes without saying. The responsible owner keeps them locked up and safe away from any kind of harm in their house, possible theft, away from their children if their children aren't trained. Although if you have children, by God, you better train your kids how to use weapons. If you own firearms, your kids should be absolutely familiar with what each one of them does.
Yeah, familiarize them with them and let them know where they're at and how to operate
Take the
them.
stigma away from them and let them know exactly what it does. Kids are smart. They'll figure out that these are not toys.
Well, not only that, but I mean, when you look right down to it, just like you hit on, Michael, the aspect of, stopping somebody from breaking into your house and just taking firearms, if you got a safe, you're in pretty good shape. If you have to worry about little kids, around, then yeah, that safe's a good idea. I think most of them are now fire rated. So that way, in case, the way I look at my firearms is they're an investment. I've got quite a few firearms that are not on the cheap end of business, and I'd be devastated if something happened to them.
I think you have a firearm that's like its nickname is like used truck.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not cheap. So, I think that in that part of it, it's probably a good idea for folks to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to say that we got to go out and legislate that stuff to happen, but just like anything else that's valuable to you,
Well, and that comes into the personal responsibility thing. People usually end up taking care of what they buy on their own. Just like anything else. If it's a gift, they usually don't take care of it. They'll be more tempted to, well, let's see what this can do and take it out and destroy it or something. People who are into this and interested in this and have basically are the same moral compass that we all have, we'll take care of them and we'll do the right things with them. And we don't need any kind of help from Big Brother government.
No, I think they plan to do that on their own. I think that
they've got other plans. We shouldn't give them any kind of room on this one.
Yeah.
So speaking of other plans, this one kind of hits home to you. In Harker Heights, there was a intruder shot.
Sounds good.
Once again, I agree, and now my computer froze up. But basically, intruder broke into a home in Harker Heights, which is fairly close to both of us, and when you're home, and broke into this house, and the homeowner was there, and she, an armed female, she pulled her weapon. Here it comes. Harker Heights resident held an intruder at gunpoint Tuesday night until police arrived after he awakened to discover that a teenager had broken into his house and was gathering items to steal. Officers were sent to around 11:30 to a home in the 300 block of Indian Oaks Drive where they found the resident holding the would-be burglar at gunpoint inside the house. So that's what we're talking about. It's not always a fatal shooting. You got to protect your stuff. You got to protect your family. Because if he's going to come in there and take your DVD player and your Nintendo and your silverware or whatever, what's to stop him from taking your daughter?
Well, exactly. Yeah, certainly. And the funny thing is that a lot of these things are not, a lot of these guys that are committing these crimes, they're on another level. These guys are, more often than not now addicted to drugs. These guys are obviously not in the right frame of mind, and they don't realize that depending upon what state they're in, just by breaking into a house, and especially if it's a habitated, building or dwelling, some states' castle doctrine will give that homeowner the right to shoot in self-defense.
I'll tell you what, in every state that's got a castle doctrine, the crime rate has dropped dramatically. Every state that's got a concealed weapons program that is a shall issue state, crime drops dramatically.
Well, what do you think now with California being a shall issue state?
I think crime will drop dramatically. And seriously, I truly believe that everybody in California who is able to should go out and buy a weapon and become familiar with it and apply for your concealed weapons permit. It's now a shall issue item. That means that you should go in, you should get your form, complete your training, submit whatever they require. It's usually fingerprints and a picture. You have your background check, and you get your permit. They mail it to you. There's no having to sign off on it by the sheriff. There's no having to demonstrate special need, no dancing around. You get that permit and you carry. Please please do get one. Find a pistol that you find that's comfortable. It doesn't matter if it's 45 or nothing, or if it's 9mm or 380 or 32 or whatever you like, whatever you can carry and whatever's comfortable in your hands and you're comfortable with, please get one and carry one. You'll watch the crime in your neighborhood drop.
What you shoot most accurately. And 22s, I've been noticing in these good guy stories, 22's been used more and more to kill intruders. There was a case in North Carolina, and there was 4 of them. 2 of them waited out in the car, and 2 of them busted through the door of this elderly gentleman, and apparently he was a cancer patient. He had pills there. They brought in a 20 gauge shotgun with him, and they brandished it on him, and he pulled out a 22 pistol on him and started firing, and he actually shot and killed one of them. He made it out the door and they made it away, but he eventually died. But again, the good guy with the gun comes through with a 22 against a 12 gauge shotgun, believe it or not.
Well, I just want to know where the hell he found the 22 long rifle ammo.
Good question. He probably had some.
He was one of them damn hoarders.
Or he bought
had an extra 7 rounds at the bottom of the sock drawer.
Yeah. You got the last box of CCI Blazers.
Oh.
That's so amazing. This 22 ammo it's ridiculous. It hasn't come back. Most other ammo has come back. But 22 long rifle is still over 10 cents or over a round, and that's ridiculous.
I think
10 cents a round is the premium stuff. 10 to 14 cents a round is match grade stuff. This is insanity when a box of Golden Bullet, the 550 bulk pack of Golden Bullet is $65. And there's problems here.
That is unreal. Now, Nick, you being in the military, you get free ammo to shoot. Is that correct?
Well, we don't necessarily get free ammo. What we get is we get time on the range, and the ammo is provided for us so that we can maintain our firearms proficiency.
How much range time do you get each year?
Actually, we go to the range twice a year, and in Korea we do that more often than they do in the States. Sometimes even in the stateside locations, they may only go to the range once a year. I don't know if you guys have seen the new Secretary of Defense's plan to scale down the size of the Army, but that's going to have catastrophic effects on the readiness of the individual soldier, because that's going to translate down the line to less money for ammunition and less time on the range. And then they'll have to build it right back up. So it's almost inviting a greater cost in the end. Well, we've actually had this example 2, 3, 4 times in history. You know, after World War I, we were woefully unprepared for World War II. After World War II, we were woefully unprepared for Korea.
I'll tell you what, isn't it odd that us being woefully unprepared always translates into massive profits for profiteers?
Oh, I mean, you're not gonna stop the profiteers from profiting. But what you are gonna see is you're gonna see a military that is not ready to meet the call of its nation.
That harkens back to the M1 Garand story. I just can't believe that Hillary Clinton stopped what Obama said was okay to bring those M1 Garands in the country, and we had Hillary Clinton stopping that importation.
Well, yeah, and actually, Dan, the ATF had said that these were legal to bring in under curio and relic, and they said
if it was curio and relic, that means it could have been shipped to anybody's door who had a curio and relic license.
Right.
And the curio and relic license is not the same as an FFL.
No. And this is the thing, that when that all came to pass and Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, she said that they were going to ban this on the importation side. So, you know, here's the deal. You've got somebody who's subordinate to the President of the United States who basically says, I don't think that this is a good idea, and therefore I'm going to ban it.
And null and voids his decision.
Well, exactly. And then, oh, by the way, guess who's looking at making a run in 2016?
Well, I still find it odd that they can use the reference point of they don't want these weapons falling into illicit hands or being used for illicit means, when the only way they'll transfer into public hands is if somebody meets the requirements set by them.
So then obviously you've done your homework, but I think what they're banking on is that the vast segment of American society does not and just accepts the explanation and goes with it, as it is. The actual quote was, the State Department chose to reverse the decision, claiming that the firearms could potentially be exploited by individuals seeking firearms for illicit purposes. Now, like I was saying earlier, I can't remember in recent times where a M1 Garand has been used in a crime spree. I can't think of when an M1 Garand has been used in a crime other than maybe shooting a deer out of season.
Gran Torino comes to mind.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think
he didn't use it. He didn't use it illegally. He used it correctly.
Yeah.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, and you know what? That thing was pristine, I'll bet too.
I think he was fairly disciplined.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly. And like I said, I think if those of you who have maybe somebody in your family down the line who served in the military from World War II, maybe even up through Korea that used an M1, it should be your right to be able to hold a piece of American history. I mean, think about it. That rifle basically won the war on, a continent and pushed the war to its limits in Asia. And, I think that it shouldn't be just in a museum. I think you should be able to go ahead and use that and go hunting with it, maintain it, shoot it at a match, do whatever. I mean, Dan, you like to do long range shooting?
Teach your children how to use it.
Well, Dan, you shoot 308 long distance, right?
Oh, yes, I have a 700p Remington that shoot long distance 308, which I love it. I love long distance shooting, actually.
And that's what a lot of these M1 Garands are used for at their national matches. I think one of them was Camp Perry, Ohio, and they have 1,000-yard shooters with these.
Yeah, that's a 30-06 round instead of 308, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, that 30-06 is a lot more powerful, actually.
No, it's a big boy.
Yes, it is. And after you shoot the M1 Garand for a little while, your shoulder lets you know it's time to quit.
That's ingenious. That's called.
You're getting ripped off by not getting that robo shoulders.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. It's a good thing it's on my left shoulder because the right shoulder's already been done.
You're all out of shoulders now.
Yeah, well, I can always start to learn how to shoot with my feet.
Oh, then they'll be legislating shoes.
Well, yeah. Well, you always have to drive with shoes on, right? That's a law in a couple states.
I know it's a law in Arizona. I don't believe it's a law in Texas. I don't know. I've never been pulled over for not driving with shoes on, though.
Well, there's always that first time.
but there's a chance. Thanks.
Yeah. Definitely.
No, the gun of the week is going to be the AR-15 again.
But it may not be for the reasons we usually think of. Nick, we both shared a story. It was the Washington Times?
Washington Times, yeah.
All right.
So basically what we've got, Dan and Michael, is we've got active duty service members coming out of the woodworks stating that in their travels recently to Central Asia and Southwestern Asia, that the M4 series of carbine rifles has had more than its fair share of failures. Now, this is not news to anybody that's ever had to fire a direct impingement M4 carbine, but it's more so coming from that it's a special operator who's going out there saying it. Guys making points that he has to bring his own small arms repair parts out to his deployments, to whether it's to change out a bolt or change out gas rings or whatever the case he has to do. But that's pretty concerning. A lot of people are really into the AR craze, and they're making them up with all different kinds of configurations and calibers. everything from 458 SOCOM, 300 blackout, 6.8, 6.5, 556, 223. And it's interesting that a lot of these guys always have the same concern. I don't know if you guys are aware, but the Army was mandated to find a next generation replacement for the AR-15 or the M4 series carbine rifles, and they stopped the competition.
And why would they have stopped the competition?
Yeah, the Army actually stopped the competition, whereas they had the FN SCAR, they had the HK-416, they had a Colt, and the Colt was the one that seemed to have the worst malfunctions and the soonest number of malfunctions over its test batch, and yet the Army said, well, we're just going to go ahead and kill the competition.
Isn't that amazing? And Colts sell for a lot more dollars than most of the AR
certainly,
line.
Yeah. And one of the things that I was going to bring up was that a lot of the failures for the Colt was directly related to the gas impingement system, whereas the SCAR and the HK-416 use a piston stroke and they have rotating bolt. So we know that there's already an inherent failure or weakness in the design of that rifle with the direct impingement, but yet they want to go ahead and keep using that firearm. And I don't know for the life of me why that they want to do that.
There's got to be some massive dirty contract stuff going on. I don't even know why they use the design of that rifle anymore. I think people might know I'm not a fan of that rifle. It's got too many problems for what it's designed for. If it's a battle rifle and its job is to go out there and function and work 100% of the time so that you have a soldier that is absolutely confident in that thing, that doesn't fit the bill. And not only does it not fit the bill, it's quite pricey for something that doesn't fit the bill.
Well, yeah, I think, looking at online, you can find maybe just the upper for between
what does the government
$600.
pay? What does the government pay for something? Because the civilian market and the military market are two completely different things. And in that story we read, we see that they were having failures at 850 rounds. Now you go to a gun show and you see that kid who's got the tacticaled up Mall Ninja AR-15, and he might have put 10,000 rounds through that thing full of, Wolf. Or maybe not 10,000, maybe you put 1,500 of Wolf and he's never once cleaned it. What are you getting when you buy a used AR-15? And then we've also got the consequences of the recent rush and the drop in quality control in the manufacturing. Now everybody makes an AR-15 lower.
Right. And it's not only going to be, it's not even going to be a milled receiver in some places. It's going to be a polymer receiver.
It's a cast receiver. It's an aluminum receiver. There's no standardization anymore. I mean, there's a standardization in the design and in basically in the numbers, but not in the manufacturing.
So the receiver is not stamped, the AR anymore?
No, I've seen them cast. I've seen them, there's polymer ones.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I think that people have to take into consideration when they're deciding to make a purchase. The M4 or the AR-15, it can be a fun rifle to shoot. It's good for.
But fun in a military sense, fun is completely different than depending on. What does the M4 cost the government when they buy it?
You're probably looking at anywhere between, without optics, just with
just an issue rifle for a soldier.
Yeah, just probably $800 per individual piece. That's not a lot.
It's not a lot, but it's.
But when you have contracts that go out to have a certain amount in inventory, that makes up some money.
But like you were saying, they have to modify those things to make them go bang every time you pull the trigger. Is that correct?
Certainly you do. You actually have to, put it this way. They're not coming off like the Eugene Storner, AR-15 from 1957. These are heavily modified with 6-position stocks, quad rail hand guards, all the improvements in the gas design.
But the 6-position stock and the quad rail handguards and the Hello Kitty cup holder that magically mounts to the Picatinny rail does not address something like spring failure.
No, and that's what I was talking about.
And this is insanity that we're sending, well, basically our family out to, aside from what you believe about fighting wars and all that, we're sending our family members out there with substandard crap. And
that is
whatever.
crap.
It's crap. It's crap. If my brother has to go and defend himself or do whatever his job requires him to do, but defend himself is the utmost of it. If he's got to go out there and deal with some straight up shit AR-15 made by the lowest bidder that's going to fail on him, there's serious problems.
Well, yeah, but that problem hasn't gone away since they went away from the M1. The M1 had very low failure rates. But what happened? People got involved and people started doing a little bit of auditing and bean counting and saying, where can we cut corners? So, I mean, when you look at it, yeah, when I was talking about it's fun to shoot, I'm talking from a purely civilian teaching a youngster how to shoot a semi-automatic rifle. That's what I'm talking about, and I think that even nowadays they have these 3-gun competitions you may have seen where the kids are firing a pistol, a shotgun, and an AR. I mean, I think that's fun. I think that's a great way to get kids involved in shooting, and it gets them familiar with a wide range of firearms. And that's something that's great. Like I said, I'm not making any kind of myself be an advocate for, hey, this is the greatest firearm in the world. It has its inherent weaknesses, and they're pretty significant weaknesses.
Yeah, they're drastically significant to life-threatening.
Yeah, they can be. And then, during Vietnam, those guys, when they were out on the ground, they'd pick up the nearest AK that they could find. They'd throw that M16A1 down. And
I find it interesting that the cost that the United States government pays is, like you said, in the neighborhood of $800. On the contract.
Yeah, like I said, that's
the contract for millions of them in basic, right? Well, the AK-47 that comes straight out the Izmash factory or whatever factory they're going to make it out of. I know that right now that in the AK world, that the factory in Romania, that their rifles have a base cost of $198.
That's affordable.
And it works.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're going to get anybody to buy in on the AKs for the Army tip. I think that's a not happening.
I'm not saying that, but I mean, there's got to be some sort of change. I mean,
well, and like I said, I think the only change that they will make, and it probably
other than that, maybe they let you go buy your own rifle to take it to war.
No, I think if anything, they may go away from a direct impingement and they may go to a gas piston. I think that's the only thing. I mean, I think this design is here to stay. And whether a person likes it or not, for its inherent failures, I think that the design is here to stay, and it's probably going to be replaced at a later date with a piston instead of a gas impingement system.
Well, I tell you what, we are just about out of time. Nick, do you have time next week to come back on with us?
I sure do. Due to my shoulder situation, the government has seen fit to give me 3 weeks off resting in my room, so I'll be around for a couple more weeks.
Well, we certainly like your knowledge of firearms, and I'd like to thank Jules for allowing us this opportunity to talk about firearms and accessories.
Jules has given us a great platform, and we can't thank UCY.TV enough, and plenty of wonderful shows on this. Prepper Chicks Live After Dark is next.
Hey, Dan and Michael, can I give a special thanks out there?
Sure. Absolutely.
All right, I want to give a special thanks to my buddy Chris out here in South Korea. He's helped me out a lot, and he's a good shooter too.
What up, Chris? Thank you all. Thanks for listening to PrimerTime Live. See what.